Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Training Industry Leader Talk, L&D Strategy for Business Results in 2026. Today's event is brought to us by Biz Library, InfoPro Learning, Lone Rock Leadership, SweetRush, and WeLearn. I'm Elizabeth. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Training Industry, and I'm so happy to be with you all today. Our next session is with Lone Rock Leadership. Complexity doesn't scale, how L&D can help managers get results. Before we jump into the next session, just a couple housekeeping reminders to help you get the most out of your time. Of course, we always encourage lots of chats, so feel free to pop open your webinar chat and use that to address any comments, or feel free to chime into the conversation. Submit any questions you have for our speaker in your Q&A panel, and we'll address those as we can during the event and certainly at the end during our Q&A section. Once this session ends, a brief survey will appear in your browser, and we'd welcome any feedback you have about the session or the speaker. All of our sessions are being recorded and will be archived on trainingindustry.com, and you'll receive a follow-up email from us with a link to those sessions that you can view again later or share with a team member who might have missed the event. If this is your first Training Industry event with us, a special welcome goes out to you. Training Industry exists to make connections among learning and development professionals like you. We offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D through live events like today's Leader Talk, as well as through articles on our website, our magazine. We have conferences in person, research reports, courses, our podcast, and I could go on. But we would love to also hear what you've learned from today's session on social media. So please follow us on your favorite platforms and continue the conversation there. Now, without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our next speaker, Russ Hill. As co-founder of Lone Rock Leadership, Russ created the Lead in 30 methodology and LeaderOS framework, helping leaders master clarity, alignment, and movement. He is the author of Deliver: Why Some Managers Get Results and Most Don't, and he's the host of the Lead in 30 podcast. Russ, it's a pleasure to have you with us. I'm going to let you take it over from here.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Elizabeth. I appreciate it. And it's great to be with all of you today, and to talk about how we as folks in L&D, those of us in that were responsible for developing leaders, how we can more significantly impact business outcomes. And so I'm going to move at a pretty fast clip because there's a ton that our team wants me to share with you over these 45 minutes or so. There are really two different groups that are on our mind as we're talking about this idea of complexity doesn't scale. The first group is L&D folks, us. Those of us that are responsible for the development, the training of managers, of executives, of leaders inside our organizations. The other group is the mid-level managers, those that are closest to the people actually doing the work. Sounds bad when you say it that way, but there's some truth to it. The folks that are closest to the front line, closest to the customer. And so we're going to talk about complexity as it pertains to those two groups. The data on this is overwhelmingly clear. Like, we could spend the rest of our time together in this session just looking at data. And I'm just going to show you three quick numbers. You've got other data that I'm sure you're familiar with that you've been looking at in the last few weeks or months, from going from 2025 into 2026. Three numbers that stand out to us are 82. 82% of HR leaders say that their managers inside their organizations, are not equipped to lead effectively. Like, there's so much you want to unpack on that, right? Like, what does that mean? Why does that exist? What's going on there? The headline, though, is that's scary or it's concerning. If 82% of the folks in HR are saying, we don't think managers in our organization are equipped to lead effectively, what are we doing about that? 8% is the next number. 8% of managers across different industries think that their company's leadership development programs are effective. Now, that's not necessarily an indictment on any of us or any particular vendor or module or course or anything else. I don't know about you, but a few years ago, when I was first promoted into a management position at the company that I was an employee at, there was no leadership development program. It was, hey, Russ, we think you're good. You show up frequently. You seem to do the job. I mean, it was a little bit more than this, but basically. And so now you've got a team. Good luck. And I didn't have a clue what I was doing. So, what does an effective leader look like? Well, I was just kind of going off of whatever books I had read, whatever college courses I had been through, what leaders I had interacted with, the good ones and the ones that I didn't want to be around at all, and quit their teams. And so you're kind of making it up. 77% of organizations, this is really interesting. 77% of organizations say that we currently lack depth in our leadership bench. And so, those of us who are logged in here, those of us in this conversation, like that's part of our job, right? We've got to develop the supervisors, the managers, get them up to VP and director level and help develop executives even. It depends on the size of your organization and what exactly your involvement is, but we've got a role in that. So these are just three numbers. There are many that we could go over that show we've got some challenges in developing leaders. And so how did we get here? Well, if we had to sum it up, if we had to sum up how we've gotten to this place where we've got significant needs when it comes to developing leaders, if we had to sum it up with one image, it would be this, which you may be thinking, what in the world does that have to do with anything? I don't know how many of you have been to the Cheesecake Factory. If you have, hopefully you've had an experience. It's been a little while since I've been there, but I've been there a few times. If you've been there, hopefully you've had the same experience I had, which was well, the food was pretty good, right? But for those of you who haven't been there, what you're looking at on your screen is the menu. Yeah, and you're seeing it correctly. There's binding on the left side, right? And so they put this book in front of you when you sit down at the Cheesecake Factory. Usually there's a long wait. You get in, and then I'm just going to take you inside the menu a little bit again for those of you who haven't been there ever or maybe haven't been there in a while. This is the dessert menu. And you're welcome, because this is going to make you hungry. And my wife's favorite part of going out to eat, right? Okay, all of this was the precursor to dessert. And so these are the cheesecakes that are offered. Yeah, there's 2 pages of desserts. Just read some of these, right? The Godiva chocolate cheesecake, the Hershey chocolate bar cheesecake, the ultimate red velvet. I mean, you could just go on and on. And so you sit here, and we're not even showing you the appetizers. We're not even showing you the pastas or any of that sort of stuff, right? This is just desserts. And so there's all these pages, and they're all great sounding items. And you want every single one of them. That's kind of the approach in many of our organizations when it comes to leadership development. For some reason, actually, the reason's known. And I'm just going to be candid with you. We're a vendor. We're a company that organizations use with executive teams as well as on leadership development and training. And we've been doing it for a long time. I've been doing this for over 20 years now. So you've been around the block. You've been in lots of different organizations, lots of different industries, and you notice trends. And one of the trends that I'm not proud of as an industry, this is speaking more about the vendor side of things, is that most of the training companies have been purchased by private equity over the last 5 to 10 years. What is private equity interested in? Increasing revenue and margins. How do you do that? You sell more courses. You sell a pass to all access to everything. LinkedIn Learning right now, the latest check just a few weeks ago, over 17,000 courses. Like, where do I even begin? It's the Cheesecake Factory menu. All great items, all great modules, great competencies and skills. But you pull up to the drive-through window and it looks like this. Like, can you imagine the line out of this drive-through? Like, you're overwhelmed with options. And so what ends up happening is you have this manager that has access, not in every organization, but in a lot. I've got access to this LMS and I've got all these courses. Where do I begin? And we're telling them you got to build trust, and we're telling them you got to know how to have hard conversations, and we're telling them you got to discover your why. It's all about purpose and inclusion, making sure people feel heard. Don't forget about efficiency and effectiveness, and you've got to work on productivity and employee engagement. Super important. You got to retain your people, but you also got to deliver. And the manager's left going, I don't even know where to begin. This is what the Harvard Business School said after looking at our industry. The, uh, their analysis led to this statement. Our survey, Harvard Business School, suggests that many L&D organizations are falling behind in their ability to exert a measurable impact on business performance. That's really interesting because if we're viewed as a support function, a nice to have, what budget gets cut first? What there are tons of people in L&D nervous about AI. We should be nervous about AI if we can't tie what we do to business outcomes. And so, yes, we're skilled in how to upskill people with competencies and skills and all of these sorts of things. That's super important. But the senior executive, trust me, this is what we do for a living on the consulting side of our business. We're with these executives all the time. They don't care as much about competencies and skills as they care about performance. And so what we do is the competencies and skills that we teach are critically important. They transform lives. They transform people's ability to lead others, including in their own home. But those are a mean to an end. And so we as L&D, we've got to talk more about the reason we're teaching this course, the reason we're doing this training is because it's going to impact quality. It's going to impact what's coming off the factory floor. It's going to impact the patient experience. It's going to impact all of these things. Do you believe that? Number one, you got to know what the results are. We're going to talk more about that in a moment. So instead of the Cheesecake Factory menu, instead of that drive-through nonsense, what we would suggest to you, I'm going to take a position on this as a firm. We take a pretty strong position on it. It's not about all access. It's not about volume. It's not about more courses, more competencies, more skills. It's about the right ones and simplifying the menu. And so, in our experience, the position we're going to take, and you get a chance to react to it to decide, yeah, I think this is true, or no, I actually don't know if this applies to us. You get to decide. What we would say is that based on our experience and what the data shows us, is managers need help in four areas, not 400, not 4 dozen, four. And these are what they are. Number one, they need help with performance. How do I get the team that I'm responsible for, whether that's 5 people or 500, how do I get them to deliver the outcomes, the results that the shareholders, the investors, the person who's ultimately responsible for my next move inside my career at this organization, how do I get this team to deliver the outcomes that matter? So they need help with results. Second area they need help with is change. I don't know about you, but in the world I live in, there's a whole lot of change going on. And the reality is that we as humans, what the data shows us, is that humans want to exist, work, live at a lake on a lake at 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Have you ever been there? Have you ever seen that? You know, you're drinking your cup of coffee or hot chocolate out at the lake and the sun's just coming up. You can hear the birds chirping. The water is just still. There's no boats. There's nothing out there. The wind's not blowing. The water, the world, it's like somebody hit pause. It's so serene. It's so wonderful. That's what we desire to live in, to exist in, to work in. The reality is we live, we work in the ocean, wave after wave after wave. And so you have managers and you have executives, leaders who go, if we can just get through this restructuring, if we can just get through these tariffs, if we can just get through the changes in the market, oh, we could breathe a sigh of relief. If we could get through this pandemic or whatever it is, right? And the reality is, no, that's just one wave in an ongoing series of waves. So the skill set that our managers need is not to fear the wave, but to ride it, to thrive in it, to be the surfer, who doesn't swim away from it, but swims towards the change, embraces it. Well, how do I do that? Sounds good, Russ, but how do I lead through change? How do I be more agile? Managers need help in that area. The third area they need help in is accountability. How to take more accountability and resist the human desire or temptation to give in to excuses, to let the boulder shrink us. We're walking on the path toward the results we're trying to achieve. We come up against this obstacle, and the human inclination is to shrink in the presence of the boulder. And yet, accountable people don't do that. They don't focus their mindset on, well, how are we going to wait out this storm? They think about, how am I going to get around this boulder? How am I going to get through it or over it? And we call it powerful. That's the word we use. Accountable people are powerful. They generate energy in an organization. Managers need help on, how do I create a team like that instead of one that's constantly surrendering to excuses. And the last area is decisions. I don't know about the company or the organization you work in, but there's a whole lot of swirl going on out there, right? And you talk to the senior executives, and they're like, if only people at the lower levels of the organization would make decisions. Why are they not making decisions? Why do they escalate everything? And then you get in the room virtually or in person with the mid-level managers, and what are they saying? If only the senior executives would empower us, would trust us to make decisions. You're like, wait, well, this doesn't make sense. Why are you both talking this way? It's because we don't have a decision-making framework. And it doesn't need to be complicated. It needs to be just a few words. We'll get into that. I'll show it to you over our few minutes together. This is it. So, in organization after organization that we work with, the Cheesecake Factory menu goes out the window. Less is more. And it's not about access. It's about focusing on the right areas. And so our position would be that these are the four areas that are most important. I'm going to dive in. I'm going to dip our toe in a couple of these over our time together. And so when you look at the headline, the title of this session, complexity doesn't scale. If we could just give you one piece of counsel, again, you get to decide what to do with it, whether it's appropriate for you or not. But based off what we're seeing over and over and over again, talking to L&D people, that's what we do for a living. And whether it's an HR executive or L&D person or a senior executive, that's just our calendar every day. And what do we hear in that conversation over and over again? We need more return on investment from our manager training, and we need to know how this impacts results. So complexity doesn't scale. Because then the senior executive goes, well, what are we really teaching our managers? Well, and then we dive into all the menu. And it makes sense to us because we've studied this stuff and we're passionate about it. We know all these competencies. We know all the skills that are critical. We've got the binder that looks like the Cheesecake Factory menu of all the things that we need to teach. And it's a 12-month or a 24-month period. And the senior executive's going, I need results like this quarter. And so we need to simplify. Simplicity scales. Complexity doesn't. So can you tell me in just 3 or 4 words how we develop leaders here? What are the core competencies? What are the basic skills that are most important? We go out to the market with just 4. And yet most of the firms around us, our competitors, the other vendors that we have a lot of respect for, they don't offer 4, they offer 400. And so it comes down to developing leaders who deliver results. There's nothing you can do more to help me as a manager. If I think back to my 25-year-old self, which is a few days ago, if I think back to that young manager, like just help me with the outcomes, because that's what's going to get me promoted. So I'm going to start in the area of clarity and give you some things to react to, and then I'm going to ask you a few questions in the chat here in a moment. So when it comes to clarity, because now we're talking about the mid-level manager, you could apply this as a senior executive too. It totally applies. But the mid-level manager who's trying to get their team to rally and accomplish certain outcomes, the reality is they need help defining those outcomes and simplicity. So in other words, well, Russ, what does your team need to deliver in 2026? Well, like we've got a million things that are going on. Just look at my inbox. Look at Microsoft Teams or Slack or whatever. There's just tons of messages and priorities and all these things. And so I've got all these things coming at me. On the far side of complexity is simplicity. So you have to, in other words, you have to work at it. And so there are way more than four skills that leaders need, but we've worked hard on it to define it and narrow it to just four words: accountability and decisions and results and change, right? So it's on the simplicity on the far side. I'm going to play a video for you here. You all, when we play a video in a virtual meeting, sometimes it takes a second to buffer. Sometimes the audio doesn't exactly match up with the video. So just have some patience with that as this video plays. It's just a couple of minutes long. It's from a colleague of mine talking about an organization that we work with, happens to be a restaurant chain, and what simplicity around outcomes looks like.
Several months before the surge of the COVID-19 pandemic, our team sat in a Chili's restaurant preparing for a client meeting the next morning. A young waitress greeted us and took our drink orders. When she returned with our drinks, we asked her if she knew her restaurant's key results. Kind of a strange question. She smirked and kind of eyed us with some degree of suspicion, likely wondering if we were corporate spies from the restaurant support center or their headquarters. Then, with hardly any hesitation, she said, yeah, guest, profit, sales, and team. Now, having worked previously with Chili's executive team, we knew she was spot on. We then tried a second question. So how do you measure the guest experience? With even less hesitation than before, she said, well, that's our GEM score, guest experience measure. So now we're really impressed. She went on to explain their restaurant's target was a 65, and so far that week they were tracking just 2 points shy of the goal. She then went on to talk about a concept she called team service, which was a simple strategy involving every employee in the front of the house where guests are seated. Each one of them was responsible for picking up dirty dishes and refilling empty glasses anytime they saw a need. All of it in an effort to deliver on their GEM score of 65. This simple exchange told us everything we needed to know about that restaurant's general manager. It told us that GM had mentally worked through the complexity of restaurant operations to focus the team on clearly defined objectives. Your team will work for money. They will work harder for good leaders, but ultimately they will work hardest for a cause. That's it. Decades of social science research suggests that by connecting someone's day-to-day work with outcomes that matter, naturally increases engagement. It doesn't matter if your team's creating groundbreaking medicines, assembling fighter jets, or delivering baby back ribs. Humans have an innate yearning to contribute to something greater than themselves. A third leader can tap into that when they use simplicity to create clarity around what matters most.
Okay, so let's talk about this idea of simplicity, because I told you at the beginning that there are two different groups that we're thinking about, talking about in this quick session right now when it comes to complexity doesn't scale. So complexity, our first position the argument I've been making is as L&D, as those responsible for training leaders, we need to narrow our focus, not expand it. It's not about more courses, more competencies. It's about picking the right ones and just a narrow focus and really drilling in on those and being able to connect those to business outcomes. So what I'm going to talk about now, what I'm transitioning to for a few minutes is, okay, now how do we help the manager show up to their team with simplicity? Instead of the Cheesecake Factory menu, hey, here's everything we need to accomplish this year, team. How do we help them simplify that? What we would advocate is this approach we call team key results, TKRs. Every organization we work with, everyone knows what TKRs are. They're the definition of where we're trying to get, the North Star. They're the destination that we're working toward. And so there are two parts to every key result. So if you think about, okay, we're in a new calendar year at the time that we're doing this session, and what are our priorities for the new year? What does, at the end of the year or a year from now, what numbers would we hit that would cause us to look back at this year and go, wow, it was a really successful year? It can't be. I'll give you a quick example before I build out this slide. Elaine is the CEO of a hospital in Boston. We've been working with this hospital, and our first phone call with Elaine as the CEO of the hospital, we said, Elaine, does the team have clarity around what they need to deliver, like what success looks like at the hospital? She said, oh yeah, we have total clarity. We said, okay, great, tell us about that. This is a phone call. And she says, well, we have a balanced scorecard. We said, oh, great, Elaine, like, tell us what's on the scorecard. She said, well, let me get it out and let me read it to you. I said, okay. So she started reading to us, and we're writing as quick as we can, trying to keep up with her on a notepad. We get to item number 20. Elaine takes a breath. She pauses for a moment. We said, okay, Elaine, is that it? She said, no, no, no. That's the first bucket. And we said, oh, okay. Elaine, it looks like there are 20 items in that first bucket. How many buckets are there? And she said, well, there are four. Well, how many items are in each bucket? Is it roughly the same as bucket number one? She said, yeah. We said, okay, 20, 40, 60, 80. Okay, so Elaine, you're asking the organization to prioritize 80 things. And she said, well, it doesn't sound very good when you say it like that. We're like, well, we're not trying to say it any different than how it exists. And she said, yeah, that's it. Those are all important metrics. We said, okay, well, how well understood are these? Oh, they're well understood. We had phone calls scheduled with all of her direct reports, the administration of this hospital. So we said, Elaine, can we ask them, the rest of the team, what clarity looks like, what the most important results are? She said, yeah, I'd love to know how they respond. To their credit, everyone we talked to on the phone, they all answered the way Elaine did. When we said, so what does success look like? What are the most important outcomes we have to deliver as a hospital? They all said, we have a balanced scorecard. And then they would say, let me get it out. We'd say, no, 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 no. Hang on a second. Just tell us from memory how many, like, tell us some of the items on it, just without looking at it. In the chat, this would be a great question to get your feedback on. How many items do you think each of those executives could recite to us right off the top of their head? Well, what's your guess on how many that they could recite? Yeah, you're all right in the neighborhood. The data is clear. The scientists will tell you this too. Our minds can remember about three to four things. So if you tell me, hey, Russ, go to the grocery, this never happened before, but hey, honey, go to the grocery store and pick this up on your way home from work today. And then I forget a bunch of items. Like that's never happened to you probably, but it has happened to me. It's because I can only remember three or four. And that's the way the brain works. So now I got to get out my note, my Apple Notes or whatever, and okay, make sure I don't forget those items so we have peace in the house when I get home, right? But so yeah, that's what happened. We talked to all of Elaine's direct reports, and they gave us two or three things. Do you think that the chief nursing officer gave us the same two or three results that the chief financial officer gave us? Not a chance, right? And so what's the chief nursing officer prioritizing? He's prioritizing different items than the chief financial officer. And then we wonder why we have silos in the organization because we're defining success differently. There's 80 priorities and these three matter to me. So I'll work on them. Then you're working on those over there. So key results, we don't have 80. Yes, we're tracking 80 things. We have a balanced scorecard. We're not suggesting you go away from that. We in a factory or a retail or a restaurant, we've got to track all these things. But what are the most important ones? So key results are the elevated, prioritized outcomes that matter most. So in that hospital, it became patient safety, patient satisfaction, and then people, retention of the nurses and their staff. Those were the three that were most important. So key results of a category like people, engagement, retention, or revenue, margin. It might be product releases. It might be something like that. And then they have a metric. What's the number we need to hit? You all think about this as it pertains to the title of this session. Complexity doesn't scale. It's very hard for me to get 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 people focused and executing on the same thing when I'm giving them complexity in the definition of success. So here's what it looks like in some organizations that we work with. These are real TKRs, team key results, and organizations we're working with right now. 95, 5, 100. This is a manufacturing company. The first key result for the year is 95% OTIF-D. That's on time in full delivery. In other words, if Walgreens orders a box of their product to put on the shelves, 95% of the time, Walgreens gets the shipment on time and in full, right? Or Amazon or whomever else. So that's one of their key results. Top 5 vendor ranking. They want Walgreens, Amazon, Target, all of them to rank them as one of their top 5 vendors. And then they're going to meet 100% of their financial commitments. You talk to anybody in this manufacturing company that you all would recognize the name of if I said, and you say, what are the most important outcomes we have to deliver this year? They don't need to look up an email. They don't need to find a PowerPoint deck. They don't have to go searching for paper. It's in their head. 95, 5, 100. What are the most important outcomes we have to deliver? 95, 5, 100. Think of the power of simplicity in defining the outcomes that matter most. In this organization, it's 3, 2, 1. 3% increase in volume, 2% increase in engagement. And there were two groups that they were talking about engagement scores. One was customers, and then one was employees. And then a 1% increase in margin. This is an organization that's going through a pretty massive turnaround. So the numbers, the targets are pretty low, but they're meaningful to them. 3, 2, 1. So everything I've been talking about is designed around clarity, alignment, movement. So this is like when an organization comes to us and says, okay, where would you suggest that we start leadership development? This is what we show them. Well, it's three areas, and we call it LeaderOS, the leader operating system, and three things that are most important to begin with. Clarity. Everything I've been talking to you about over the last 2 minutes is under clarity. Does the team have clarity around what they need to be prioritizing and focusing on? Think of the power of L&D driving the conversation around results in an organization. Then you got no fear of AI because a robot can't do that, right? It's based on conversations that we're having. We're tying ourselves to the outcomes that matter most, and the competencies and skills are enabling that. So the language I'm speaking in HR and L&D is about what are the most important outcomes. We need to help our leaders at all levels of the organization develop their TKRs to define success for their team. The executive goes, wait, seriously? That's what you care about most? Yeah, that's what we're focused on. So we need clarity from you so we can help the rest of the organization develop clarity. That is a totally different relationship in an organization than we typically see at the beginning. The second area is alignment. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. We're going to dip our toe in it. And then movement's all about execution. So you define clarity as we're going to define the outcomes that matter most for the organization, the department, the business area, and the teams. Then we're going to get people aligned to it. And then we're going to generate movement. We're going to execute towards it. So I'm going to put up these two words and have you go to the chat. and here's the question. When you think about these two different words, awareness versus alignment, let's say that I'm a mid-level manager in your organization, and I'm trying to create here in January, the beginning of the year, at the time we're having this meeting, I'm trying to create awareness for the targets for the year, the key results. What would I do? Just think real basic. What would a mid-level manager do to create awareness in an organization or a team or a department of the targets? What would I do? Just type in the chat. What would a manager do to create, this is just basic stuff, right? What would they do to create awareness? Right. You see some of these, yep, you call a meeting, right? And there might be a marketing campaign, Jennifer, right? Stephanie, it's about communicating it. We can send a memo out, Patricia, right? So it's an email, it's a meeting, it's posting it somewhere. That's creating awareness. Here's the problem. Most managers know how to send an email. They know how to call a meeting. They're actually too good at that. And just look at our calendars, right? And they know how to post a message in Teams or Slack. They know, in other words, they know how to create awareness. What they really want, but they don't use the word too often, is alignment. So they're creating awareness and wondering why they don't have alignment for that new policy they're asking people to abide by, or that priority that they're asking people to elevate to be really important, or the result that they need them working toward. So back to the chat, just your input on this. You all are, you got tons of experience. There's probably nobody logged in that's brand new to this space. If you are, welcome to it. But a lot of you have tons of experience in this space. What do you do to create alignment? What would a manager do? So if I send an email or call a meeting to create awareness, what do I do to create alignment? Give us some coaching on that in the chat. Andrea, collect input, right? Melissa, it's all about engagement, right? I wish we could have a conversation, you all. I wish we had the time and the setup to where we could get you on mic here. Kathy, yep, absolutely. So here's how we describe it in the most simple form. When the manager or executive or leader is speaking, he or she is creating awareness. When the team is speaking, you're building alignment. Said differently, in fact, I'm going to play a video on this. Let's just have, this is Carrie from our team. Carrie's going to describe an organization that I'm in Arizona, you all, and this company she's going to reference is not too far from me in Arizona as well. And she's going to talk about what we saw as it pertained to awareness versus alignment.
Imagine this. You're soaring 100 feet above ground at a blazing 550 miles per hour with a destination 1,500 miles away, a space the size of a backyard pool. Now picture dropping into that spot atop a Tomahawk cruise missile. Talk about complexity in design and manufacturing, right? We teamed up with the 10,000 individuals in Tucson who pulled off precisely that feat. Nestled in the Arizona desert, this site has been crafting advanced missiles for decades. But when we sat down with the site leader to delve into their challenges, we were hit with an unexpected revelation. Within moments, he opened up with, "Our SAP implementation is a train wreck." The last 18 months had been a whirlwind of issues, going in circles and second-guessing decisions. Employees were dragging their feet, reluctant to embrace the new system. As we unraveled the chaos of the past year and a half, it became clear. Early communication misfired. Original messages harped on the what and the when, detailing cutovers and timelines. But despite everyone being aware of the new system cutover, alignment was completely missing. During our interviews, a common theme emerged. The old system was great. Why change? The new system falls short in many areas. We now know from experience that how people think drives how they behave. Listen carefully to what they were saying. The old system is better. We don't need the new system. If that's how they are thinking, what behavior would you expect to see as they are trying to launch the new system? Confusion. I don't know how the new system is supposed to work. Pointing out problems. I told you this would be a problem. The new system just doesn't do what we need. Sabotage. This is where people actually look for areas to let the new system fail, hoping if enough of those happen, we can go back to business as usual. This list could go on and on. Now let's pause for a moment to consider something. What's the real problem here? Everyone was aware, but clearly they weren't aligned. There is a massive difference between awareness and alignment. I mean, these are rocket scientists. You don't think they can figure out how to make SAP work? Often, when you think you have an execution problem, you really have an alignment problem. As you learn the skills of the alignment process, you'll be able to master challenges just like this one.
So this is Carrie talking about this concept of awareness versus alignment. We would summarize that as saying alignment's messy and it happens out loud. And so as I try to help my team as a mid-level manager prioritize and focus on the right things in order for us to achieve the outcomes we need to deliver, I've got to get my team talking. And that's a skill set that comes with help, with training. I'm just going to spend maybe 60 seconds walking you through this slide. This framework deserves a lot more time. We just don't have it today. How do you create alignment? Well, it's 3 steps. The greatest compliment you could pay to us in any of the slides or content or frameworks that I'm showing you today is, hey, Russ, that's really simple. That's a huge compliment. Things don't, it's very easy to come up with complexity, but when you work really hard at simplifying it, simplicity scales. In the organizations we work with, you say, how do you create alignment? People say, oh, number one, you make the case and you gauge and discuss, and then you get involved. Now, if I asked an AI tool to give me a framework for how to create alignment, they could come up with 17 steps and all kinds of great models and it academically backed, and it's just beautiful and it's awesome. But complexity doesn't scale. And so how do you create alignment? Well, the first thing you do is you give people the why. You tell them, well, why are these results 95, 5, 100? Why do we need to hit those numbers? Why do they matter? Why'd you pick those 3? Then you gauge and discuss. Why are you asking me to follow this new policy? Or what challenges or complications do you see, team, in implementing this? And the team's now talking. You're gauging where they're at in alignment. You're discussing and getting their pushback or challenges. And then you seek their involvement. Alignment's not about agreement. It's about involvement. Managers who chase agreement never find it They discover it's a mirage. You can never even get a family to agree on what movie to watch in Netflix. How do you get a team of educated people with diverse backgrounds to agree on anything? You don't. You get them aligned to, okay, yeah, I guess we could move in that direction. That makes sense. Clarity, alignment, movement, simplicity. That's where leadership starts in our mind. So I've spent a little bit of time in our time together going over results, just this first area. I haven't spent any time on change, accountability, or decisions. We've got frameworks for each one of these. One thing you'll notice is they all look fairly similar. They're very simple. How do you lead through change? This is the framework that we teach. It's about acknowledging the power of status quo, talking about how people mourn the loss or disruption of status quo, helping them adapt and then innovating. Accountability is about being powerful. Nobody wants to go to a class or a training or a course on accountability. They all think they're accountable, but they all understand the difference between feeling powerless and feeling powerful. We all can relate to that in our personal relationships and in our work relationships or work environments. Powerless, when we feel powerless, we surrender. We wait and we wait and we hope that things change. When we show up powerfully, we figure out how are we going to get around this boulder? How are we going to improve that relationship with our sister? The decision framework looks like this. And how do you accelerate decision making and create more buy-in in organizations? You define the decision maker. Teams, groups don't make decisions. Individuals make decisions. Teams inform leaders who make the decision. That's why we have a leader. So we promoted someone to manager, supervisor, director. Ultimately, their job is to make the decision. What's the job of the group then? To inform the decision maker. And so you see some elements here. So I'm going to extend an invitation to you. If what I'm talking about, you're like, wow, Russ, I'd really like to find out more about that. You can scan this QR code or go to the URL. We do these all the time in person. I think we're in 10 cities in 2026. There might be one near you. You can look at the schedule on this URL, or you can attend a virtual session. We don't charge for any of it. These aren't sales calls. That would be slimy and you need to shower afterwards. We don't do it that way. It's just like this. We're just sharing ideas and frameworks and best practices in your networking. There's way more discussion on these than I've been able to do here because of the setup. But we'd love to have you attend one of these. I'll put this back up in a minute, but my last couple of minutes, I want to show you simplicity as it goes to the modality of training. Perhaps you're using the same approach in how you train managers in your organization. Maybe you're not. We wanted as a team to show you what simplicity looks like in training. Yes, you can do the all day in-person session. That works. We have organizations that still want to do that for specific reasons. Others are only dipping into one of these elements. What we found and what the science backs up is the best way to teach and to get people to integrate, use what you're teaching is to do a blended approach. So we teach these courses called like Lead in 30. That's where we teach clarity, alignment, movement. We teach a course, we certify people in it on Adapt in 30, which is around leading through change, or Decide in 30, which is about decision making, or Power in 30, which is around accountability. Why 30 days? Because it's a blended learning. Every week for 4 weeks in a row, someone comes to a live class on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever it is, for 30 or 60 minutes. Then they go into the portal. They watch 5 to 7 minute long videos. The 2 videos I played in our time together are from our portal. That's what they look like. And so they're watching those on their own time. They don't spend a lot of time, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and then they attend a peer huddle where they're networking with some of their colleagues and sharing what they've learned. And then you do this, you rinse and repeat 4 weeks in a row, right? And then what you notice, what the overwhelming data shows you is, wow, they actually understood it. They're using it. They weren't overwhelmed because it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and they've been sitting in person and we've been throwing all these models and frameworks in their heads spinning and they don't know what to use. No, you put it into bite-sized elements and they go through in a cohort, right? And then you have multiple touch points that focus on that. So as I get ready to turn it back over to Elizabeth and wrap up my time with you, number one, thanks for the engagement, everybody. I hope that I've given you some things to think about and that your head's thinking about it. Hopefully there's been value to you. And then if you want a deeper dive into what I've been talking about, just jump into one of these master classes with our faculty and to meet some of our folks from the instructional design side or different side of our business. They'd love to interact with you. So there's the invitation. And with that, I think, Elizabeth, I'm right on time, which I hope. And I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks so much for letting us lead this discussion.
You are perfect timing. Thanks, Russ, and great session. Lots of good kudos coming through for you in the chat. All right, everybody, we are going to take just a quick 15-minute break here. Our next session is coming up at the top of the hour with InfoPro, what skills-based organizations require from L&D in 2026. So I hope to see you all there.